Hello everybody. In this video lecture, we will cover material for your lab exercise number 7, the integumentary system. On this first slide, you can see a model of human skin. Now, if you wonder how much do you need to know about this model, then please refer to your lab manual, and it's actually page number 90. And it's figure 7.1, and all the structures that are labeled on that diagram in your lab manual, this is how much you need to know about this model. So let me cover the part that you need to know. Okay, so this part is epidermis. Deep to epidermis is dermis, and then we have hypodermis, or subcutaneous layer, or superficial fascia that is not part of the skin but shares some functions. Now, in the epidermis, you have several layers. We call them strata. So here you see these numbers 1 through 5, right? So those are 5 different strata of the epidermis, and we will talk about it in a minute. Dermis has 2 layers. So this layer over here is papillary layer, and beneath is a reticular layer. Also, you guys need to know that epidermis is made of epithelial tissue. It's stratified squamous keratinized epithelium, and dermis is made of connective tissue. Papillary layer is made of areolar connective tissue, and reticular layer is made of dense irregular connective tissue, and hypodermis is mostly adipose tissue. So that's this part. Now, another things you need to know, that this is the shaft of the hair, this is the root of the hair, and the root of the hair is located inside hair follicle. So this structure here is a hair follicle, and we will talk about different covering and of the hair follicle, different layers in a minute. So we have a shaft, we have root of the hair, and we have hair follicle. So again, shaft is this one over here. That's a shaft, that's a root, right? That's a root. And the hair follicle is an organ that actually makes hair. Now, you also need to know this gland. Okay, let me pick up this. So here's the gland, and this is sweat gland. It's a merocrine or ecrine sweat gland, and this is the duct of the sweat gland, and this is the pore. Through this duct and through this pore, the sweat is secreted on the surface of the skin. This gland over here is oil or sebaceous gland. This structure is smooth muscle, and this muscle is responsible for goosebumps, and this is called Erector Pili muscle. Also, we have lots of these nerve endings here. These yellow lines are part of the nervous system. Let me cover some of them that you need to know, right? This is called sensory-free endings, like this one or that one, and it gives you general sensation of, let's say, temperature or pain. Now, this structure over here, this is called tactile corpuscle or Meissner corpuscle, and this is a receptor for touch. Now, this structure over here is called lamellar corpuscle, or and this one is responsible for vibration and pressure. Okay, so we have tactile, right, for touch, and we have lamellar for vibration and pressure. And we have free endings here for temperature and pain. You also can see some blood vessels, right? So for your blood vessels, these blood vessels over here, right, they form these loops, and it's called papillary loops. And this is the plexus, and plexus means network of blood vessels, and it's called dermal vascular plexus because it's located in the dermis of the skin. Okay, so that's how much you need to know about this model, and again, you can refer to your lab manual to see all this labeling. This is photomicrograph of thick skin, and specifically you can see epidermis here. So, a sec. So we have here 5 strata. So here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right. So if we start from deep to superficial, it will be stratum germinativum, and germinativum, another name is basale. So we can say stratum basale. It's on a basal surface. Then we have stratum spinosum, right? So here's our stratum spinosum. Then we have stratum granulosum, stratum lucidum, and stratum corneum. And actually, if you have 5 strata, then this is thick skin. In the thin skin, the stratum lucidum is missing. So no stratum lucidum in a thin skin. So where would you find a thick skin? Thick skin you only find in 2 locations, on your palms and on your soles. So here is a thin skin, so you don't see stratum lucidum here. And please go ahead and just read through this description, what is stratum corneum, granulosum, spinosum, and basale. But what I want to tell you, I kind of want to help you to identify those layers. So stratum basale is only 1 cell thick, right? So it's right here. Right, so that will be our stratum basale. So it's very thin layer, one row. Those cells are very mitotically active. They're stem cells, and they divide by mitosis frequently. Right, just above it, right. So all this part is stratum spinosum, and these cells all cells here are keratinocytes, and we have a few amount of other cells, such as, let's say, melanocytes, that is about 10–20% of the cells, but most of the cells are keratinocytes. So we have keratinocytes here on stratum basale, and those keratinocytes make their movement from the basale all the way up to the corneum, right over here, and along this journey they dying. So, so here in the stratum spinosum, those are cells that became, their membrane became thick, they start synthesize lots of pre-keratin, they are connected by desmosomes, and they're getting to the point when they start dying here. Now, this layer is stratum granulosum, and actually you can see lots of granules. It does look very, very granular, right? And because the cytoplasm full of these granules, and in these granules you will find lipids and keratinohyaline granules, so keratin, lipids. And then on the top we have dead cells, right? Stratum corneum, about 20–30 layers. And cells are dead. They only presented by flat membranes that connected to each other, filled with the keratin. and we have glycolipids in extracellular space. So stratum corneum is the one that constantly is shadow of your skin, and then new cells, new synthesized cells in the stratum basale moving up to the upper layers here, right, replacing those cells that you're constantly losing. Okay, so let's see if you have next slide. On this next slide, you guys see the photomicrograph of a thin skin, and in the thin skin, the epidermis is pretty thin. So that's an epidermis, and you see the dermis actually is pretty thick layer. So that's an epidermis. Oh, I'm sorry, dermis. So epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis over here. Now, what else you can see over here? You see a hair follicle. So that's a hair follicle. So that's a hair follicle. Inside the hair follicle, you see a hair root. So that's a hair root. And then this is hair shaft. You see sebaceous glands or oil glands over here. You see these glands. Those are sweat glands. You also can see this structure, right? This is our lamellar corpuscle or piscineal corpuscle. That's an old name. They don't use piscineal anymore, right? But this is our lamellar corpuscle. Right, so right here, sweat glands, oil glands. I already show you hair follicle here, right? And hair root, hair shaft. And this is longitudinal view, and this one over here actually also hair follicle with hair inside, but this is a cross section, right? Another structure you can see here is actually this structure. That's our Erector Pili muscles, this one and this one over here. So this is Erector Pili, and this is mostly our adipose tissue, right, in the hypodermis. Here's some blood vessels. Okay, so this is a photomicrograph of the thin skin with hair and hair follicles. On this diagram, you just see our lamellar corpuscle or piscineal corpuscle, and you notice over here that they located very deep in a dermis, because that's already hypodermis here, like, right? That's hypodermis, so they're really, really deep in the dermis. These two pictures shows us both Meissner corpuscle and piscineal corpuscle. Now we call them tactile corpuscle and lamellar corpuscle. This is diagram of the hair follicle and hair root, and this is a cross section. So let me show you very quickly what we have here. So the hair is actually right there inside, right? So that's the hair, and hair has the medulla, right? So that's our medulla inside. Then we have cortex, right? So that's a cortex. And then we have cuticle, so that's a cuticle. And everything superficial, right, from this point all the way up to this point is actually follicular wall. And follicular wall has two sheaths, right? So here's the word, sheath. We have connective tissue sheath, and it's shown here like in bluish color, right? So like this one. So that's a connective tissue sheath. And then everything in a pinkish color, right, from this point up to this point, this is epithelial tissue root sheath. And what separates them, so follicular wall is made from epithelial root sheath and connective tissue root sheath. And what we have in between them is a glassy membrane, right? So that's our glassy membrane right here. And this is actually our basement membrane, right? So that's a glassy membrane. So superficial to it is a connective tissue root sheath right there. and deep to it epithelial tissue root sheath, both external and internal. So next slide. So hair follicle extends from epidermal surface into dermis, and it has two-layered wall. We just talked about it, outer connective root sheath and inner epithelial root sheath, both external and internal epithelial root sheath. And then hair bulb is a part of the hair, not the follicle, and it's expanded deep end of the hair. We do have hair follicle receptors, and those are the ones that sense the movement of your hair. Those are sensory receptors. We have erector pili muscles, smooth muscle attached to the follicle, and they are responsible for goosebumps. This is the photomicrograph of the longitudinal view of the hair in the follicle, and so this part of the hair root is called hair bulb. So it's expanded part of the hair root, that's a hair bulb. Here's another new structure that you can see over here. This structure is called hair papilla, right? And inside this papilla, you have connective tissue and some blood vessels and some nerves entering this part right here, right? Now, this part is called hair matrix. And in the hair matrix, this is where we have these stem cells that divide by mitosis, and then they pretty much die, making your whole hair. So that's your hair. Also, in the hair matrix, you will find like little bigger cells, and those will be melanocytes that produce granules, granules located inside the little vacuoles, and granules of melanin that give your hair different colors. In the rest of this diagram, you can see our follicular wall, again, connective tissue sheath over here, right there, and then epithelial tissue sheath. Right, okay, so here's our connective tissue sheath, epithelial root sheath, and between them we have our glassy membrane. And this white part, I just want to show you, let me take maybe yellow color, right, because you might need it for your exam. So you see this white, oh, sorry, here's this white, right, structure over here. Right, this is actually the cuticle. So here's the cuticle. So that's a cuticle. So we have cuticle, then we have medulla, right? So that's medulla of the hair. So that will be medulla. And in between we have cortex. So that's what I color here in yellow, right? That's hair. Everything superficial to it up to this point, this is follicle and follicular wall. Okay, well, I hope it is helpful. You do need to know structure of skin and hair for your lab exam. Bye for now.